The single millionaire dad was taking his son to school when he saw his ex-girlfriend crossing the street with twin baby girls. And what he did surprised everyone. Today, we're going to meet Daniel and Olivia, two paths that went in different directions and reunite in the most unexpected way possible. If you like light, fun, and exciting stories, go ahead and leave your like. Your support really helps the channel continue bringing stories like this one. Enjoy the story, everyone. 7:42 in the morning. Daniel Collins looked at the clock on the car dashboard and let out a long sigh. The traffic in front of Naperville Preparatory School was slower than a turtle crossing hot pavement. Luxury cars, huge pickup trucks, and minivans formed a line that seemed endless. "Dad, did you know I have a math test today?" Daniel took his eyes off the crosswalk for a second to look at his son in the back seat. "I did know. You studied, didn't you?" Caleb Collins flashed a smile that always gave him away when he was hiding something. "Sort of." "Caleb?" Okay. I studied last night, about 15 minutes. 15 minutes? Dad, it's math. Numbers are numbers. They don't change." Daniel shook his head but couldn't hide his smile. Caleb had this annoying ability to turn any argument into something that seemed to make sense, even when it made no sense at all. The car in front moved forward a few yards. Daniel drove a little further and stopped at the crosswalk, which was full of mothers and fathers crossing. And that's when he saw something that made his heart race. Between a blonde mother talking on her cell phone and a father balancing 3 backpacks on his shoulders, a woman was crossing the street pushing a double stroller. Daniel frowned. There was something familiar about that woman. The way she walked, slightly leaning forward, the brown hair, the way she bit her lower lip when she was focused. No, it couldn't be. Daniel's heart jumped inside his chest. That uncomfortable jump that happens when you're at the top of a roller coaster and realize there's no turning back. The woman lifted her head for a moment, dodging a puddle on the pavement, and Daniel saw her face. Olivia Monroe. For a moment, the entire world seemed to go into slow motion. The sounds of traffic disappeared. The children's voices faded. Even Caleb, who was saying something about the math test, went silent. Olivia Monroe. The same Olivia who had been his girlfriend in high school. The same Olivia he had loved with all the ridiculous intensity of a 17-year-old boy. The same Olivia who, on a September afternoon, had said they needed to talk and then simply disappeared from his life without explanation, without reason, without anything. The last time Daniel had heard about her, 2 years ago, was through a mutual acquaintance who casually mentioned at a party that Olivia had married Richard Ashford, a millionaire businessman who had more money than common sense. The news had reached Daniel's ears like hot water. It didn't burn, but it bothered him just the same. And now, there she was. But she wasn't the Olivia he expected to see. The Olivia he imagined, if he still imagined anything about her, was an elegant, well-dressed woman with a private driver and probably a nanny for each day of the week. The Olivia he imagined wouldn't be pushing a heavy stroller with deep dark circles under her eyes, wearing a stained sweatshirt and worn-out sneakers. Inside the double stroller, 2 twin baby girls were fidgeting. One of them was holding a colorful toy that clearly belonged to the other, because the second baby was making that indignant face that only small children can make. "Dad? Dad, are you okay?" Caleb's voice brought Daniel back to reality. He blinked several times as if waking from a dream. I'm fine. You're making a weird face." "I'm not making any face." "Yes, you are. You look like you've seen a ghost." Daniel didn't answer because the description was annoyingly accurate. The light was still red. Olivia kept crossing the street, struggling with the stubborn stroller that had one of its wheels crooked, and Daniel remained still, hands on the steering wheel, not knowing exactly what to do. The sensible answer was to do nothing. Wait for the light to turn green, move forward, drop Caleb off at school, and continue with the morning as if nothing had happened. After all, 15 years had passed. 15 years of silence, of unanswered questions, of a wound he thought had healed. That was the sensible answer. But then Olivia's stroller got stuck. One of the front wheels got stuck in an uneven spot on the sidewalk, making the stroller stop abruptly. Olivia almost lost her balance. The babies, surprised by the movement, started complaining at the same time. Olivia tried to free the wheel but couldn't. She tried again. Nothing. She looked around, clearly searching for help, but everyone around was too busy with their own morning problems. And Daniel, without thinking, which was probably the trademark of all his most questionable decisions, made a decision. He pulled the car over, in the loading and unloading zone, in front of the school, where there was a huge sign saying parking was prohibited. "Dad, you can't stop here." "I know. The sign says you can't." "I saw the sign, Caleb." "So why are you stopping?" "Because sometimes we do things that don't make sense." "That's not an answer." "I know. Stay here." Daniel opened the car door before he could change his mind. A chorus of horns started behind him, but he ignored it. A mother in a silver pickup truck yelled something about traffic obstruction, but he pretended not to hear. And he crossed the distance to Olivia in a few seconds. She was still bent over the stroller, trying to fix the wheel problem. The babies had stopped complaining and were now watching everything with that silent curiosity that small children have when they realize something interesting is happening. "Need some help?" Olivia lifted her head, and time stopped for the second time that morning. Her eyes met his. Green. The same green eyes he remembered from 15 years ago, now framed by lines of exhaustion and surprise. For a second, neither of them said anything. Then Olivia did the only thing that seemed appropriate for the situation. She turned completely red. "Daniel?" "Hi, Olivia. What are you? How are you? Why are you?" "The stroller wheel got stuck. I thought you might need help. She didn't finish the sentence. In fact, she seemed to have temporarily forgotten how to form complete sentences. Daniel took advantage of the silence to crouch down and examine the problematic wheel. "It's just a rock. Got stuck here in the axle. Let me see if I can." He worked on the wheel for a few seconds and managed to dislodge the rock. The stroller moved freely again. "There you go." Daniel stood up and wiped his hands on his pants, completely ruining the fabric that had been spotless. But he didn't care. At that moment, pants were the least of his worries. Olivia was still looking at him as if he were an apparition. "Thank you," she finally managed to say. Thank you. You're welcome." The silence returned. That awkward silence that fills the space when two people have 15 years of unspoken history between them. One of the babies in the stroller made a sound that seemed like a laugh, or maybe a burp. It was hard to tell with children that age. Daniel looked at the stroller. "Twins?" "Yes, Lily and Sophie. They're beautiful." "Thank you." More silence. On the other side of the street, a familiar figure appeared at the school entrance. Mrs. Thompson, the secretary who had worked there for over 20 years and who knew all the secrets of all the families in Naperville, was watching the scene with poorly disguised interest. She had a coffee mug in her hand and the expression of someone who had just found gossip material for the entire month. Daniel pretended not to notice. "Do you need a ride somewhere? I can take you." "No, you don't need to. We're fine. I was just—" She stopped talking. Her eyes shifted to some point behind Daniel. "Dad." Daniel turned around. Caleb had gotten out of the car, completely ignoring the instruction to stay put, and was now approaching with curiosity. "Dad, you're taking too long, and there's a lady in the silver pickup truck who's making weird hand gestures." "Caleb, I told you to stay in the car, and you said you couldn't park there, but you parked anyway, so I figured we were ignoring rules today." Daniel took a deep breath. The logic of an 8-year-old child was both impressive and exasperating. Caleb looked at Olivia, then at the stroller, then at the babies. "Who is she?" The question hung in the air, heavy with awkwardness. Olivia opened her mouth to answer, but Daniel was faster. "An acquaintance from a long time ago. Like from school? Something like that." Caleb analyzed Olivia with that critical look that children have when they're deciding if someone is trustworthy or not. "Cool. I'm Caleb Collins." Olivia swallowed hard. "Collins?" "Yeah, Caleb Collins, son of Daniel Collins. This is my father." Olivia's face became even paler than before, which Daniel didn't think was possible. Nice to meet you, Caleb." "Nice to meet you. Your babies are cute. Are they yours?" "Yes, they are." "Why do you have two?" "Caleb," Daniel intervened. "That's not a polite question." "Why not? I just want to know." "Because sometimes people have twins. It happens." "But why?" Olivia, surprisingly, gave a small smile. The first smile since this entire conversation had started. "Sometimes life decides that one baby isn't challenge enough," she said. so it sends two at once. Caleb considered the answer. Makes sense. Like when the teacher assigns two projects in the same week because he thinks we have time to spare. Exactly that. Daniel looked from Caleb to Olivia, and for a very brief second, something inside him warmed up, a feeling that was familiar and at the same time completely new. But the moment was interrupted by the sound of an engine. A traffic officer on a motorized bicycle was approaching Daniel's car, looking at the no parking sign with that satisfaction that only inspectors can have. I think you're going to get a ticket, Caleb observed. Daniel sighed. Probably. He looked at Olivia one last time. It was good to see you. It was good to see you too. A lie, he thought. She clearly wanted to be anywhere else on the planet. If you need anything. I'm fine, Daniel. Really. He nodded, even though he didn't believe it. Let's go, Caleb. You have a math test to face. Caleb made a face but followed his father back to the car. While Daniel explained to the traffic officer why he was parked in a prohibited area, he looked in the rearview mirror. Olivia was already crossing the rest of the street, pushing the stroller with the twins, without looking back. And on the other side of the street, Mrs. Thompson kept watching, now with a smile that clearly said, "This is going to be interesting." Daniel paid the ticket and spent the rest of the day trying, unsuccessfully, to get Olivia Monroe out of his head. Daniel's coffee had been cold for 40 minutes. He hadn't noticed. He also hadn't noticed that he'd been holding the same piece of toast since he sat down at the breakfast table, staring at a fixed point on the wall as if it had answers to questions he didn't even know how to formulate. "Dad, you're acting weird today." Daniel blinked and looked at Caleb, who was chewing cereal with the intensity of someone analyzing a scientific experiment. "I'm not acting weird." "Yes, you are. You put orange juice in your coffee." Daniel looked at the mug. Indeed, there was an orange and not at all appetizing mixture floating there. It was on purpose. It was not. It's a new recipe, European. "Dad, you can't even cook an egg. Don't give me that European recipe thing." Daniel pushed the mug aside, defeated. Caleb was 8 years old, but argued like a courtroom lawyer. His mother's inheritance, for sure. Melissa had always been the most perceptive person Daniel had ever known. "Is it because of the lady with the babies?" "What?" "The lady from yesterday, with the twin babies. Do you really know her?" "I said she was an acquaintance." "Acquaintance from where?" "From school." "From my school?" "From the old school." "From when I was young." Caleb stopped chewing. "Like when you were my age?" "A little older." "Like a teenager?" "That's right. Was she your girlfriend?" Daniel choked on air. Literally. He had nothing in his mouth and managed to choke anyway. "Why are you asking that?" "Because you got that fish face when you saw her. You know, mouth open, eyes wide. Just like when Aunt Martha tells those long stories and you don't know how to escape." "I didn't get a fish face." "Yes, you did. I saw it." Daniel stood up and grabbed the car keys. "Come on, or you'll be late for school." "You didn't answer my question." "What question?" "If she was your girlfriend." "It's none of your business." "So she was." "Caleb." "What? You didn't say no. When an adult doesn't say no, it means yes. I learned that from the Detective Dog cartoon." Daniel took a deep breath, counting to 10 mentally. He got to 3 and gave up. "It was a long time ago. It doesn't matter anymore." "Okay," Caleb shrugged, grabbing his backpack. "But you still have fish face." The traffic in front of the school was even worse than the day before. Daniel kept his eyes fixed on the crosswalk, but this time for completely different reasons. He wasn't looking for Olivia. Definitely not. He was just observing the environment, paying attention to his surroundings, being a conscientious citizen. "Dad, there!" Daniel almost jumped in his seat. "What?" "Where?" "The ice cream. Look, a new ice cream shop opened across the street." "Oh, ice cream, right? Did you think I saw something else?" "No. Seems like you did." "Just get to school, Caleb." Caleb opened the car door but stopped before getting out. "Dad, if you want to talk about the lady with the babies, you can talk to me. I'm good at keeping secrets. You told the whole school when I burned the birthday cake." "That was different. It was funny. This seems serious." And before Daniel could respond, Caleb jumped out of the car and ran toward the school entrance, backpack bouncing on his back. Daniel stayed there for a few more seconds, his fingers drumming on the steering wheel. He wasn't looking for Olivia. That's when he saw her. She was on the other side of the street, partially hidden behind a tree, pushing the twins' stroller in the opposite direction from the school, as if she was trying to go unnoticed, as if she was trying to avoid exactly the place where Daniel was. Which, let's face it, was a terrible plan, considering she was wearing the same purple sweatshirt from the day before, and the double stroller was the size of a small car. Daniel got out of the car, not to talk to her, of course, just to stretch his legs, get some air, admire the local architecture. "Mr. Collins." The voice made Daniel freeze mid-step. Mrs. Thompson was coming toward him with the speed of a torpedo and the precision of a guided missile. She was carrying a clipboard, 3 folders, and a smile that promised nothing good. "Good thing I found you. I need help carrying some boxes to the auditorium." "Now?" "Right now. They're decorations for the science fair. They weigh a ton." Daniel looked to where Olivia was. She had already noticed his presence and was clearly increasing the stroller's speed. "I really need to." "Oh, wait." Mrs. Thompson waved frantically at someone behind Daniel. Miss with the stroller. Could you help too?" Daniel closed his eyes. No. Sorry, me?" Olivia's voice sounded behind him. "Yes, you. It's just a few boxes. Many hands make light work." Daniel turned around slowly. Olivia was 3 yards away from him, with an expression that mixed horror and resignation. "Hi," he said. "Hide. You know each other?" Mrs. Thompson asked with completely false innocence. What a wonderful coincidence. The silence that followed was so thick you could cut it with a knife. The twins, oblivious to the adult's awkwardness, played quietly in the stroller. One of them was trying to eat her own foot. The other watched with genuine scientific interest. "So," Mrs. Thompson clapped her hands, "the boxes are over there. Shall we?" The next 15 minutes were the longest of Daniel's life. He and Olivia carried boxes in silence, avoiding eye contact as if looking at each other would trigger some kind of natural disaster. Mrs. Thompson chattered nonstop about the science fair, apparently obsessed with a volcano project that promised to be spectacular. "So, Miss Monroe," Mrs. Thompson said casually, "has it been long since you came back to Naperville?" Daniel almost dropped the box. Monroe. She still used her maiden name, or had gone back to using it. Olivia hesitated. "A few weeks. And your husband? Didn't he come with you?" The silence was deafening. "I'm not married anymore," Olivia finally said, her voice carefully controlled. "Oh." Mrs. Thompson had the decency to look embarrassed for approximately half a second. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. Everything's fine." It wasn't. Daniel could see that clearly, but it wasn't his business. Not anymore. They finished loading the boxes and left the auditorium. Mrs. Thompson disappeared with some excuse about important phone calls, leaving Daniel and Olivia alone with the twins. "Thanks for the help," Olivia said, already moving toward the stroller. "Olivia," she stopped. "I can help with whatever you need. A ride, support, anything." "Daniel, it's not because of the past, it's because you clearly need help, and I can offer it." Olivia turned around, and for a moment, he saw something in her eyes. Exhaustion, perhaps, or maybe pride. "I don't need charity. It's not charity, it's basic human decency. I'm fine. The girls are fine. We're managing." "Olivia?" That's when Sophie, or was it Lily? Daniel still couldn't tell them apart, started crying. Not a normal baby cry. A cry that seemed to have been designed by acoustic engineers to hit the exact frequency to vibrate windows. Olivia ran to the stroller, picked up the baby, tried to calm her down. Nothing worked. The crying only got louder. Daniel watched for a few seconds. Then, without thinking, he moved closer. "Can I try?" Olivia looked at him, clearly wanting to refuse. But the crying was getting louder, and people around were starting to look. She handed the baby to Daniel. He adjusted the little girl in his arms, supporting her head with one hand while the other made gentle movements on her back. It was an instinct he hadn't forgotten, developed during Caleb's first months of life. "Hey, little one," he murmured. "It's okay. Everything's fine." The baby sniffled, sobbed, and miraculously stopped crying. Olivia's jaw dropped. "How did you?" "Practice." Caleb was a difficult baby. He returned the baby to the stroller where she was now perfectly calm, playing with her own fingers as if she had never cried in her life. Olivia stayed silent for a long moment. "Daniel, I don't have a permanent place to stay." The words came out fast, almost stumbling over each other, as if she was afraid of losing them if she took too long. Daniel felt his stomach sink. What? We're staying in a temporary place. Very temporary. But I can't accept your help. Not after everything that happened. She grabbed the stroller and started walking, leaving Daniel standing in the middle of the sidewalk. But before disappearing around the corner, she looked back one last time. And in her eyes, Daniel saw something that looked a lot like hope fighting against fear. He was still processing that information when his phone rang. It was the school. Caleb had just been sent to the principal's office. The principal's office had a specific smell of trouble, a mixture of reheated coffee, old papers, and nervous sweat from children who knew they had done something wrong. Caleb was sitting in a chair that seemed to swallow his small body, swinging his feet that didn't reach the floor. "Explain to me again," Daniel said, massaging his temples. "You did what?" "I just told the truth." "What truth?" "That Tommy Peterson couldn't say his dad was the richest man in Naperville because that was statistically unlikely considering the number of businessmen in the area." Principal Miller, a 60-year-old woman with glasses that seemed to have come from the 80s, cleared her throat. "Mr. Collins, your son also presented a chart." "A chart?" "With demographic data he researched during recess." Daniel looked at Caleb, not knowing whether to be impressed or worried. "Where did you get that data?" "Internet." And a bit of logical deduction. "Caleb, you can't just—" "Dad," he was bragging. "Someone needed to present the facts." Principal Miller sighed. "There was no formal punishment, Mr. Collins. We just thought it was important to inform you, and perhaps guide Caleb about appropriate moments to present statistical analyses." Daniel drove Caleb home in silence, processing the day. First Olivia revealing she had nowhere to stay. Then his son humiliating a classmate with demographic data. It was too much information for a Tuesday. That night, he couldn't sleep. He lay staring at the ceiling, replaying the conversation with Olivia. Temporary place. Very temporary. What did that mean? A hotel? Someone's house? Something worse? 15 years ago, Olivia had disappeared from his life without explanation. Now she was back, clearly needing help and refusing any offer. Her pride had always been strong. That hadn't changed. The next day, Daniel dropped Caleb off at school and decided to get coffee at a nearby cafe. He needed caffeine. He needed to think. He needed anything other than sitting still in traffic staring at crosswalks. Cafe Aurora was a small, cozy place with wooden tables and a cinnamon smell that filled the space. Daniel ordered a double espresso and sat near the window. That's when the door opened and Olivia walked in. The universe clearly had a very peculiar sense of humor. She was pushing the twins' stroller, who were exceptionally quiet, probably exhausted from crying so much at inopportune moments. Olivia went to the counter, ordered something, and only then noticed Daniel sitting there. Her expression was a work of art in 3 acts: surprise, irritation, and resignation. "Are you following me?" she asked. "I got here first." "That doesn't answer my question." "I'm not following you. I just wanted coffee." "At a cafe that's exactly on the route between the school and nowhere?" "It's a free country. I can have coffee wherever I want." Olivia huffed but didn't leave. She looked at the available tables, all occupied, and then at the empty chair in front of Daniel. "I'm not sitting with you." "I didn't offer." "Good." Silence. One of the twins made a sound that seemed like a laugh, or maybe mockery. Hard to tell. "There's an empty chair here." Daniel pointed to his table. "You said you weren't offering." "I changed my mind. That's my prerogative." Olivia rolled her eyes but moved closer. She parked the stroller next to the table and sat down, maintaining the greatest physical distance possible from Daniel, which was impressive considering the tiny size of the table. The attendant brought her order. A simple coffee for herself and a small bowl with pieces of banana and strawberry for the twins. "So," Daniel said, "temporary place." "I don't want to talk about it. You mentioned it yesterday." "It was a moment of weakness. It won't happen again." "Olivia, Daniel, listen." She put her coffee on the table with more force than necessary. "I know you want to help. I know you think you have some obligation because of the past, but you don't. We broke up 15 years ago. You moved on with your life. I moved on with mine. The fact that my current life is a bit complicated isn't your problem." "A bit complicated?" "Okay, very complicated. Happy now?" "Not especially." Lily, or Sophie, Daniel still couldn't tell them apart, reached her little hand toward the fruit bowl. Olivia picked up a piece of banana and gave it to her. "Where are you staying?" he asked. "In a place." "What kind of place?" "A place with a roof and walls. It meets the basic requirements of a place." Olivia, Daniel. They stared at each other. It was like a Western showdown, but with coffee and babies instead of horses and dust. "It's a motel," she finally said. "Cheap, clean enough, temporary." Daniel felt something tighten in his chest. "A motel? Don't look at me like that." "Like what?" "With that pitying face. I don't need your pity. It's not pity, it's concern." It's the same thing in different packaging. The other twin now also wanted fruit. Olivia gave her a piece of strawberry, quickly emptying the bowl. "Aren't you going to eat anything?" Daniel asked, noticing she only had coffee. "I'm not hungry." A lie. He could see it in her eyes. "Olivia, let me help." "Why? Because of the past? Out of guilt? Out of pity?" "Because of them." He pointed to the twins, who now had their little faces smeared with fruit and looked extremely satisfied with themselves. "They have nothing to do with what happened between us. They're just two babies who need stability. Let me help because of them." Olivia stayed silent for a long moment. "What are you proposing?" "Anything. A ride, help with practical things, a better place to stay until you get organized. I'm not moving into your house. I didn't offer my house. So what did you offer?" "Help. Generic. No specific definition. You choose what to accept." Olivia narrowed her eyes. "You're very insistent. You're very stubborn. That's not a flaw. It's also not a quality when it keeps you from accepting help." "Lily?" "Definitely Lily." Daniel was starting to notice the difference, grabbed a piece of banana that had fallen on the stroller tray and threw it. The piece flew in a perfect arc and hit a man at the next table, right on his suit shoulder. The man looked at the stroller, then at Olivia with a disapproving expression. "Sorry," Olivia said quickly. She's still learning to not throw food at strangers. The man huffed and went back to his newspaper, wiping his suit with a napkin. Sophie, not wanting to be outdone by her sister, grabbed her last piece of strawberry and also threw it. It hit the same man, on the head. Daniel had to bite his lip to keep from laughing. "They have impressive aim," he commented. "They have an impressive ability to embarrass me in public. That's talent. Don't worry about it." Olivia finally gave a small smile, the first real smile since this whole conversation had started. "Okay," she said. "One favor, minimal, temporary." "What is it?" "I need a ride tomorrow for a job interview. I don't have a car and public transportation with the stroller is a nightmare." "Done. Just that, nothing more." "Just that. And you won't try to convince me to accept anything else." "I won't." "Promise?" "I promise." She looked at him with suspicion, clearly not believing him. At that moment, Daniel's phone rang. He looked at the screen and frowned. "I need to answer this." He stood up and went to a corner of the cafe. The call lasted 3 minutes. When he came back, Olivia immediately noticed that something had changed. "What happened?" "Problem at work. I need to go to New York today." "New York?" "Emergency meeting, investors." Olivia looked at him, then at the clock on the wall, then at the twins. "When are you coming back?" "Tomorrow night? Maybe the day after." "And the ride?" Daniel hesitated. Olivia's expression changed, not to anger, but to something that looked like confirmation. As if she were saying mentally, "I knew this was going to happen." "I can ask my driver to take you," Daniel offered. "Your driver? He's trustworthy." "Daniel, you have a driver, and investors in New York, and emergency meetings that take you out of state from one day to the next." "I was just trying what I meant." She stood up, starting to gather the twins' things. "Olivia, it's okay, really, I'll manage." "You don't need to manage, let me help. You just said you need to go to New York." "But I can arrange." "Daniel." She stopped, looking directly at him. "That's exactly the point. Our worlds are different, they always were. You have emergency meetings and private drivers. I have a cheap motel and 2 babies who use strangers as fruit targets. It doesn't match." She started pushing the stroller toward the exit. "Tomorrow night," Daniel said. "When I get back, we'll talk." Olivia stopped at the door. "Maybe." And she left. Daniel stood there, holding a coffee that had gone cold a long time ago, wondering how a cup of espresso had turned into so much complication. His phone rang again. Another message about the meeting. But all he could think about was Olivia pushing that stroller alone, going to a cheap motel, not accepting the help he offered. And the phrase she had said, "Our worlds are different." 15 years ago, she had disappeared without explanation. Now, Daniel was beginning to wonder if the reason hadn't been exactly that. The return flight from New York was delayed 4 hours. Daniel arrived in Naperville at 2 in the morning, with dark circles that looked like they were painted with charcoal and a mood that matched Illinois' rainy weather. But at 7:15 the next morning, he was at the school door, as always. Caleb got out of the car yawning. "Dad, you look like a zombie." "Thanks for the constructive observation." "You're welcome. That's what kids are for." Daniel watched Caleb enter the school and was about to leave when he saw the familiar double stroller crossing the street. Olivia also looked like she hadn't slept, but she was there, and for the first time in days, she didn't try to avoid him when she saw Daniel. "Hi," she said, stopping next to his car. "Hi. How was the interview?" "I didn't go." "What? Why?" "Public transportation with 2 one-year-old babies is an adventure I don't recommend. I gave up at the 3rd transfer." Daniel felt a pang of guilt. "I'm sorry, if I hadn't traveled." "It's not your responsibility, Daniel. I already told you that." Silence. The twins played quietly in the stroller, oblivious to the adults' tension. "Do you want to get coffee?" Daniel asked. "Not at the cafe. There's a park nearby. We can walk." Olivia hesitated. "Why?" "Because I need fresh air, and you clearly do too." "This isn't a date. I didn't say it was. Just making it clear." "Crystal clear." She rolled her eyes but started pushing the stroller toward the park. Centennial Park was almost empty at that hour of the morning. Just a few determined runners and ladies walking with tiny dogs that looked more like fashion accessories than real animals. Daniel bought 2 coffees at a kiosk and handed one to Olivia. "Thanks." "You're welcome." They walked in silence for a few minutes. The stroller made a rhythmic sound on the stone path, creating a strange soundtrack for this situation. "So," Olivia finally said, "was New York productive?" "Sort of. Investors are complicated people." "I imagine so. They want immediate results but don't want to take risks. It's like wanting to lose weight while eating cake every day." Olivia gave a small smile. "Sounds frustrating." "It is, but it's part of it." More silence, but this time less uncomfortable. "Can I ask you something?" Daniel said. "Depends. Depends on what?" "On how personal the question is." "Moderately personal." "Then maybe." Daniel took a deep breath. "Why did you come back to Naperville? Of all places, why here?" Olivia took a while to answer. Her eyes were fixed on the path ahead, avoiding his gaze. "Because it was the only place I knew. I grew up here. My mother lived here before moving to Florida. It seemed safe. Even knowing I was here? I didn't know you had stayed. I thought you knew." "Daniel, I spent 15 years avoiding any information about you. It wasn't hard. We didn't have mutual friends. I deleted social media years ago. When I decided to come back, I had no idea you still lived here." She finally looked at him. "If I had known, I probably would have chosen another place." "Should that offend me?" "No, it's just the truth. Sometimes the truth isn't kind." Daniel absorbed the information. "So running into me was an accident, a huge, embarrassing, and completely unplanned accident. Like most things in life?" "Exactly." Olivia gave a short laugh. "You know, when I was a teenager, I had a plan. College, career, marriage at 28, kids at 32, everything timed. And what happened? Life. Life happened, and it doesn't care about schedules." Lily chose that moment to throw her pacifier on the ground. Olivia stopped to pick it up. "Marriage at 23 to a man who seemed perfect," she continued, cleaning the pacifier. "Twins at 29. Divorce at 31. Motel in Naperville at 32. None of that was in the original plan." "Plans are overrated," says the man who probably has an organized schedule through 2030. 2028, actually. After that, I improvise. Olivia laughed for real this time. A laugh Daniel hadn't heard in 15 years, but recognized immediately. "And you?" she asked. "Did your plan work?" Daniel was silent for a moment. "Partially. I got married, had Caleb, the company grew. Sounds like a success. Melissa got sick when Caleb was 3. A year later she was gone." Olivia stopped walking. "Daniel, I didn't know. How would you? You said you avoided any information about me." There was no accusation in his voice, just a statement. "I'm so sorry. It was 5 years ago. The pain doesn't disappear, but you learn to live with it." They started walking again, slower now. Raising Caleb alone changed me, Daniel continued. I learned there's no manual for anything. You do the best you can and hope you don't mess up too much. He seems like an amazing kid. He is. Stubborn, questioning, and with a scary ability to leave me without arguments. But amazing. He sounds like you. Melissa would say the flaws are mine and the qualities are hers. She sounds like she was a smart person. She was. The smartest I ever knew. Olivia stayed silent, clearly processing all of that. I'm sorry, she said quietly. For what? For disappearing. 15 years ago, without explanation, without anything. Daniel felt his heart race. Why did you do that? The question hung in the air like a heavy cloud. Olivia opened her mouth to answer, but no sound came out. Olivia, I spent years wondering what I had done wrong. What I had said, what I hadn't said. I deserved at least an explanation. I know. So why? She stopped again, this time looking directly at him. Her eyes were shining, but not with happiness. Because I was young and scared, and I thought... A bark interrupted the sentence. Before either of them could react, a huge golden retriever appeared running down the path. The dog spotted the twins' stroller, as if it were the most interesting toy in the universe. No, no. Olivia tried to turn the stroller, but it was too late. The dog jumped on its hind legs, resting its front paws on the side of the stroller, and started licking the twins' faces with absurd enthusiasm. Sophie screamed in fright. Lily screamed with joy. The contrast was impressive. Beethoven, Beethoven, come back here. A white-haired lady was running after the dog, completely out of breath. Daniel tried to push the dog away, who clearly thought this was a wonderful game. Sir, he's friendly, the lady gasped. He's huge, Daniel replied, finally managing to create distance between the animal and the stroller. They're the same thing to him. Lily stretched her little hands toward the dog, clearly wanting more. Sophie kept crying, her face covered in dog drool. Olivia tried to clean her daughter while holding the stroller, while the lady attached the leash to Beethoven, who wagged his tail as if he had just done the best thing of his life. Sorry, dear, the lady said. He escapes whenever he sees children. Loves children. Doesn't know he weighs 90 pounds. It's okay, Olivia said, clearly not thinking it was okay. The lady left dragging Beethoven, who looked back with the face of someone who didn't understand why the fun had ended. Daniel looked at Olivia. Olivia looked at Daniel. Sophie was still crying. Lily was still stretching her hands toward where the dog had gone. And, out of nowhere, Olivia started laughing. Not a small laugh, a full belly laugh, the kind that makes your stomach hurt. This, she said between laughs, perfectly sums up my life. Every time something important is about to happen, a giant dog appears and licks everyone. Daniel also started laughing. Metaphorically or literally? Both, apparently. They stood there, laughing in the middle of the park while Sophie gradually calmed down and Lily complained about not being able to play with the dog anymore. When the laughter subsided, Daniel looked at Olivia. You were going to tell me something, before Beethoven. The laughter disappeared from her face. It was nothing. Olivia. Daniel, not today, please. She started gathering things in the stroller, clearly getting ready to leave. You always do this, he said. You get close and then run away. I'm not running away. Yes, you are. That's exactly what you're doing. Olivia gripped the stroller bar tightly. Maybe I am, but it's not because I want to. Then why? She didn't answer. Instead, she started pushing the stroller toward the park exit. Thanks for the coffee, she said without looking back. And she left. Daniel stood in the middle of the path, holding an empty coffee cup, with more questions than when the morning began. 15 years ago, Olivia had disappeared without explanation. Now it seemed the explanation was right there on the tip of her tongue, waiting to come out. But something still kept her from speaking. 3 weeks. 21 days. Daniel wasn't counting. But if he were, that would be the exact time since Olivia Monroe had come back into his life like a hurricane of double stroller and permanent dark circles. And sometime during those 3 weeks, something strange happened. They developed a routine. Not a planned routine. Nothing official. Just a series of coincidences that repeated with suspicious frequency. Daniel dropped Caleb off at 7:30. Olivia showed up around 8, pushing the stroller. They had coffee together at the park kiosk. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they stayed silent. Sometimes the twins threw things at strangers. It was strange. It was comfortable. It was completely confusing. "Dad, is Olivia going to be there today?" Daniel almost choked on his breakfast. "What?" "Olivia, the lady with the babies. She's always there when you drop me off at school." Coincidence. Every day is a coincidence? Sometimes the universe is repetitive. Caleb chewed his cereal with that analytical look Daniel knew all too well. "You like her?" "She's a pleasant person." "That's not what I asked." "Finish your cereal, Caleb." "You're deflecting. I'm your father. I have the right to deflect." Caleb shrugged, but the smile on his face said the conversation wasn't over. Just postponed. At school, Mrs. Thompson was already at her usual post, coffee mug in hand, and the expression of someone cataloging every movement of every parent. "Mr. Collins," she greeted. "Beautiful morning, isn't it?" "Certainly. Miss Monroe hasn't arrived yet, but I'm sure she'll arrive soon, like every day, at the same time, in the same place." Her tone was casual. The implication was not. "Coincidence," Daniel said. "Of course, Naperville is a small town, full of coincidences." Before Daniel could respond, the double stroller appeared at the corner. Olivia was pushing with the determination of someone crossing a minefield. Sophie slept peacefully. Lily was busy trying to eat her own shoe. "Good morning," Olivia said as she approached. "Good morning," Daniel replied. Mrs. Thompson watched the exchange with a smile that promised nothing good. "You two are adorable," she commented. "Like an elderly couple who meet at the park every day to feed pigeons." "We're not a couple," Olivia said quickly. "Or elderly," Daniel added. "Or feeding pigeons," Olivia completed. "Details." Mrs. Thompson waved her hand and entered the school, clearly satisfied with herself. Olivia let out a long sigh. "Does she do this every day?" "Basically." "And you never thought about dropping Caleb off earlier, before she arrives?" "I tried once. She arrived at 6:45. "Does she live here?" "I have my suspicions." Olivia laughed. Not that restrained laugh from the beginning, a real, relaxed laugh. They walked to the park kiosk, where the attendant, a young man named Marcus, who already knew both their orders, prepared the coffees before they even asked. "Double espresso and oat milk latte," Marcus said, "and the fruit bowl for the little ones." "Thanks, Marcus," Olivia said. "You're welcome, Mrs. Collins." Deadly silence. "Monroe," Olivia corrected, her face turning red. "Miss Monroe." "Oh, sorry, it's just that you always come together, so I thought." "No, we're not. We aren't. None of that." "Got it, sorry again." Marcus moved away quickly, clearly regretting having said anything. Daniel was making a heroic effort not to laugh. "Don't say anything," Olivia warned. "I wasn't going to say anything." "You're smiling. It's an involuntary reflex. I have no control. You have total control over your face. Not when you turn red like that." Olivia picked up the coffee and took a long sip, clearly trying to hide her face behind the cup. They sat on a bench while the twins ate fruit. Sophie had woken up and was now fighting over a piece of banana with her sister, each one pulling to one side. "Do they always do this?" Daniel asked. "Always. It's their favorite sport, food fighting. Who usually wins? Neither of them. The banana always ends up on the ground." As if listening, the banana slipped from the twins' hands and fell exactly between them. Both looked down, then at each other, and started crying simultaneously. "And there it is," Olivia sighed. Daniel, without thinking, picked up 2 new pieces from the bowl and handed one to each baby. The crying stopped instantly. "You're good at this," Olivia observed. "Practice." Caleb was worse. Once he cried for 40 minutes because the cookie broke in the wrong shape. What was the right shape? To this day I don't know, but the wrong one definitely made him cry. Olivia smiled, shaking her head. They stayed silent for a moment, watching the children. It was a comfortable silence, the kind that happens between people who don't need to fill every second with words. Daniel looked at Olivia sideways. The morning sun illuminated her face, softening the lines of exhaustion. She seemed more relaxed than in the first few weeks, more herself. And it was at that moment that Daniel realized something he should have realized much earlier. He still felt something for her. Not the same teenage passion from 15 years ago, something different, more mature, more complicated, more real, and completely inconvenient. "Daniel?" He blinked, coming back to reality. "What? You were staring at nothing for about 30 seconds. "I was thinking." "About what?" "Things." "What kind of things?" "General things. Nothing important." Olivia narrowed her eyes, clearly not believing him. You're a terrible liar. I'm a great liar, you just know me too well. The words came out before Daniel could stop them, and the weight of them hung in the air, changing the atmosphere. Olivia looked away. Daniel, we can't. I didn't say anything. You didn't need to. I saw it on your face. My face didn't say anything. Your face said everything. Before he could respond, a familiar voice interrupted. Dad. Caleb came running through the park, backpack bouncing on his back. Behind him, a young teacher seemed to be trying to catch up with him without success. Caleb, what are you doing here? Didn't class start? The teacher said it's extended recess because there was a problem with the heating system. The teacher finally reached the group, out of breath. Mr. Collins, sorry, he ran off before I could explain that parents would be formally notified. It's okay, thanks for coming after him. The teacher waved and went back to the school, clearly relieved she hadn't lost a child. Caleb looked at Olivia, then at the twins, then at his father. Your friend is here again. Olivia isn't my... Hi, Aunt Olivia. Aunt Olivia. The silence that followed was deafening. Olivia opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Daniel wanted to say something, but his brain had temporarily stopped working. What? Caleb asked, genuinely confused. Isn't she your friend? She is, just a friend. Then why is everyone making that weird face? We're not making a weird face. Yes, you are. You look like fish again. Olivia finally found her voice. Caleb, you can call me Olivia, just Olivia. But Dad said I have to call adults sir and ma'am or uncle and aunt. It's more polite. In this case, just Olivia is polite enough. Caleb considered the information. Okay, just Olivia. He looked at the twins. Can I play with the babies? They're too small to play the way you play, Olivia explained. I can play slowly. I know how to do that. You do? Yes, look. Caleb sat on the ground in front of the stroller and started making faces at the twins. Lily immediately started laughing. Sophie watched with scientific suspicion, as if evaluating whether this strange being was trustworthy. Daniel and Olivia watched the scene, temporarily distracted from the earlier awkwardness. He's adorable, Olivia said. He's a hurricane disguised as a child. Runs in the family. Daniel was about to respond when Olivia's phone rang. She looked at the screen and all the relaxation in her face disappeared instantly, as if someone had turned off the light inside her. What is it? Daniel asked. Olivia didn't answer. She just kept staring at the screen, her face pale. Olivia? It's Richard, she finally said, her voice low. My ex-husband, he wants to talk. Daniel felt his stomach sink, and from the expression on Olivia's face, she did too. Olivia didn't respond to her ex-husband's message. She also didn't answer the 3 calls that came after. And she spent the next 2 days avoiding Daniel as if he were a contagious disease. But in a town the size of Naperville, avoiding someone was a sport that required more skill than she had. On Thursday, Daniel found her sitting on a bench in front of the public library. The twins were sleeping in the stroller. Olivia was staring at nothing, her cell phone in her hand as if it were about to change everything. Are you okay? Daniel asked, approaching. I'm fine. You don't look fine. Thanks for the observation. Very helpful. Daniel sat down next to her, keeping a respectful distance. Want to talk about it? No. Okay. They stayed silent for a few minutes. The noise of the city filled the space between them, cars passing, birds, a child crying somewhere in the distance. He wants to see the girls, Olivia said suddenly. Daniel didn't respond. He just waited. After months without any news, months without sending a penny of child support, now he wants to see the girls. And you? Me what? Do you want him to see them? Olivia let out a bitter laugh. What I want doesn't matter. He's their father. Legally, he has rights. Rights he ignored for months. The legal system doesn't care about emotional nuances. Before Daniel could respond, a black car stopped on the other side of the street. Not just any car, an imported sedan, the kind that cost the equivalent of a year's rent. Olivia went rigid. No, she murmured. The car door opened and a man got out. Tall, dark hair, perfectly styled, a suit that looked custom-made. He looked around until he spotted Olivia and started crossing the street. Is that him? Daniel asked quietly. Richard. The name came out as if it tasted bad. Richard Ashford approached with the confidence of someone who had never heard the word no in his entire life. He looked at Daniel, then at Olivia, and finally at the stroller where the twins were sleeping. Olivia, he said, as if greeting a casual acquaintance. You didn't answer my calls. I was busy. Too busy to talk about our daughters? You mean the daughters you abandoned 8 months ago? Richard made a face of displeasure. I didn't abandon them. I needed to sort some things out. Sort things out, of course. That's what we're calling it now. Daniel remained seated, watching the exchange. Every instinct in him screamed to intervene, but this wasn't his battle. Richard finally seemed to notice that Daniel existed. And you are? Daniel Collins. Collins. Richard frowned as if the name were familiar. The Daniel Collins from Collins Ventures? Yes. Richard's expression changed, a mixture of surprise and calculation. Interesting, he said, looking from Daniel to Olivia. You didn't waste any time. It's not what you're thinking, Olivia said quickly. And what am I thinking? Something inappropriate, for sure. That's your specialty. Richard ignored the comment and crouched down to look at the twins in the stroller. They've grown. Babies do that. It's a characteristic of the species. You don't need to be sarcastic. I don't need to, but it helps me not scream. Sophie chose that moment to wake up. She looked at Richard's face, a stranger she clearly didn't recognize, and did the only thing that made sense. She started crying. Lily, awakened by her sister's noise, also started crying. Whether from solidarity or protest was impossible to say. Richard backed away from the stroller as if the babies were radioactive. Do they always do this? Only with strangers, Olivia replied, picking Sophie up. The double meaning hung in the air, heavy and intentional. Daniel stood up and, without saying anything, picked up Lily. The baby calmed down almost instantly, looking at him with curiosity. Richard watched the scene with an expression Daniel couldn't decipher. Look, Olivia, Richard said, trying to speak over Sophie's crying. I know I messed up, but I want to make it right. Make it right how? I want to be part of their lives. Now? After 8 months? Better late than never. That's literally the worst comfort phrase that exists. Sophie finally calmed down, but kept looking at Richard with suspicion. For a 1-year-old baby, she had impressive instincts. I have rights, Olivia, Richard said, his tone changing. My lawyers. Your lawyers what? Are going to sue a single mother who's trying to survive while you drove your imported car without sending a penny of child support? I was going to send it. I was just sorting things out. You already said that. Lily, still in Daniel's arms, reached out her little hand and grabbed a piece of his hair, and pulled. Hard. Ow, Daniel let out, trying to free himself without hurting the baby. Lily found this hilarious. She started laughing and pulling more. She likes you, Olivia observed, a ghost of a smile appearing on her face. She's trying to make me bald. Even so, Richard watched the interaction with growing discomfort. Olivia, can we talk in private? No. Why? Because I have nothing to say to you that can't be said here. You're being difficult. I'm being honest. You show up after months, without warning, wanting to see the girls as if nothing happened. It doesn't work like that. So how does it work? You really want to know? Olivia put Sophie back in the stroller with more force than necessary. This is how it works. You left me 7 months pregnant. You said you needed space. You disappeared and I had the girls alone, in a hospital, with no one holding my hand. Her voice was rising. I raised them alone for 8 months, changed diapers alone, spent sleepless nights alone, moved to a cheap motel because I had nowhere to go. And now you show up with your nice suit and your imported car wanting rights? Richard opened his mouth to respond, but Olivia wasn't finished. You want rights, Richard? Then prove you deserve them. Not with lawyers, with presence, with support, with responsibility. The silence that followed was absolute. Richard looked at Olivia, then at Daniel, then at the twins. I'll be in touch through my lawyer, he finally said, to formalize a visitation agreement. Do whatever you want. You always do. Richard hesitated for a moment, as if he wanted to say something else. Then he turned and went back to the car. The engine started, the car drove away, and Olivia collapsed. Not literally, but Daniel saw the exact moment when all the strength she was holding simply evaporated. Her shoulders fell, her eyes filled with tears, her hands started shaking. Olivia, I'm fine. You're not. I need to be. I have no choice. Lily was still in Daniel's arms. He gently placed her in the stroller next to her sister and turned to Olivia. You don't have to do this alone. I've always done it alone. That doesn't mean you have to keep doing it. Olivia closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. Daniel, you're a good person, I know that, but I can't get attached to you. Why? Because everyone I get attached to leaves, and I can't take one more person leaving. The words hung in the air, heavy and painful. I'm not going anywhere, Daniel said. You can't promise that. Yes, I can. You can't. No one can. She opened her eyes, looking directly at him. I need distance, Daniel. At least for now. She grabbed the stroller and started walking. Daniel stood still, not knowing whether to follow or let her go. But before turning the corner, Olivia stopped and looked back. Thank you, she said, for being here today. And she left. Daniel stood there for a long time, processing everything that had happened. Olivia had asked for distance, but something in her eyes said that distance was the last thing she really wanted. 5 days without seeing Olivia. 120 hours of silence. And Daniel was starting to act like a rejected teenager, which was pathetic considering he was 34 years old and had a company to run. You're sighing again. Daniel looked across the restaurant table, where his best friend, Marcus Chen, was watching him with a mixture of amusement and concern. I wasn't sighing. You've sighed 3 times in the last 5 minutes. I counted. You should be paying attention to your food, not my size. My food isn't having an existential crisis. You are. Marcus was the kind of friend who told inconvenient truths with a smile on his face. They'd known each other since college, and Marcus had been the best man at Daniel's wedding. He had also been the person who helped him survive after Melissa was gone. It's not an existential crisis, Daniel said. It's just confusion. Does confusion have a name? Olivia, the high school ex who reappeared out of nowhere with twins? That's the one. Marcus whistled softly. Man, you know how to pick complications. I didn't pick anything. She appeared in front of me, literally, crossing the street, and you decided to help. She needed it. And now you're in love. Daniel opened his mouth to deny it, but the words didn't come out. Marcus smiled. I knew it. It's not that simple. It never is. But the real question is, what are you going to do about it? Daniel stayed silent, playing with the food on his plate. Melissa would want you to be happy, Marcus said, more serious now. You know that, right? I know. But I'm afraid. Of what? Of losing again, of getting attached, and then… He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Marcus nodded, understanding. Fear is part of it, Daniel. You can't live avoiding it. On the other side of town, Olivia was having her own version of an existential crisis. The motel seemed smaller every day. The walls seemed to be closing in. The twins were getting too big for the tiny space, and she missed Daniel. She hated to admit it, but she did. Focus, Olivia, she murmured to herself, looking at the borrowed laptop. Job openings. Focus. But every time she tried to concentrate, the image of Daniel holding Lily appeared in her head. The natural way he interacted with the girls. The patience. The kindness. She shook her head, pushing the thoughts away. Distance was the plan. Distance was safe. Distance was working perfectly until the next morning, when she went to get some things at a store near the school and ran into Daniel in the cleaning products aisle. Because of course the universe had that sense of humor. Hi, he said, clearly as surprised as she was. Hi. Awkward silence. Do you come here often? Daniel asked and immediately made a face. That sounded like a cheap pickup line. Sorry. Olivia couldn't help a small smile. It was pretty bad. I know. My social skills are rusty. Clearly. They stood in the aisle, pretending to look at cleaning products as if they were the most fascinating thing in the world, and the twins sleeping in the stroller. How are you? Daniel asked. Fine. Lie. Okay, so. That's more honest. Olivia sighed. Daniel, about what I said, you don't need to explain. Yes, I do. I was rude. You were emotionally overloaded. That's different. Still, you were just trying to help and I pushed away. Yes, it's okay. I understand. Olivia looked at him, genuinely surprised. You understand? I'm afraid too, Olivia, of getting attached and losing, of repeating mistakes, of all those things that make us want to build walls. You? Afraid? I'm a widower. I loved someone with everything I had and then she was gone. So yes, I'm afraid. Very much so. The words hung in the air, heavy and vulnerable. So why do you keep trying? Olivia asked quietly. Because the alternative is standing still. And that's worse. They looked at each other for a long moment. The cleaning products aisle suddenly seemed like the most intimate place in the world. I don't know how to do this, Olivia admitted. Trust, depend, all those normal things. Nobody knows. We pretend until we learn. That's terrible advice. I know, but it's honest. Olivia laughed, a small laugh, but real. Were you always like this? Honest to the point of being inconvenient? Melissa said it was my worst and best quality. She sounded smart. She was. Daniel's phone rang, breaking the moment. He looked at the screen and frowned. It's Caleb's school. Answer it. Daniel answered, and Olivia watched his expression change from confusion to concern. What? He did what? I'm on my way. He hung up. What happened? Caleb tried to set up a science demonstration in the cafeteria, something involving Mentos and soda. Apparently, the ceiling is now brown. Olivia blinked. The ceiling? The entire cafeteria ceiling. How did he manage to? I don't know, but I need to go. He started running toward the exit, then stopped and looked back. Do you want to come? Why? Because you're better at not laughing in serious situations than I am. Olivia hesitated for half a second. Then she left the shopping cart and ran after him with the twins in the other stroller. The school was controlled chaos when they arrived. The cafeteria smelled like soda and regret. The ceiling was indeed covered in brown stains, and Caleb was sitting in a chair in the principal's office with an expression that mixed pride and awareness that he was in trouble. Dad, he said when he saw Daniel. I can explain. Please explain. It was in the name of science. Did science ask you to destroy the cafeteria? Technically, I was testing chemical reactions. On the ceiling? The ceiling was an unplanned side effect. Olivia bit her lip to keep from laughing. Daniel shot her a look that clearly said, not helping. Principal Miller explained the situation with patience that seemed to be at its limit. Caleb would be suspended for 1 day, and Daniel would have to pay for the damages. When they left the school, Caleb was quiet for the first time. I really am sorry, Dad. I know, but actions have consequences. I know. Olivia watched the interaction in silence. It was strange how she felt part of it, even though she had no right to. Olivia, Caleb said suddenly, sorry for ruining your day. You didn't ruin my day. But you came running because of me. That's what friends do. The word hung in the air. Friends. Was that what they were? Later, while Daniel was taking Caleb home, Olivia received a message. A job opening. In Chicago. Full-time, full benefits, decent salary. The opportunity she had been waiting for. But Chicago was an hour away from Naperville, and for the first time, leaving didn't seem so simple anymore. The job offer glowed on her phone screen like a promise and a threat at the same time. Chicago. Administrative assistant at an accounting firm. Decent salary, benefits, stability, everything Olivia needed. Everything that would take her away from Naperville. She told Daniel the next day while they were having coffee at the park. The words came out fast, almost stumbling over each other, as if speaking slowly would make everything more real. Chicago, Daniel repeated, his coffee cup frozen in the air. It's only an hour away. An hour is far. An hour is an hour. It's not another country. Daniel was silent for a moment. Olivia watched his face, looking for some reaction. Anger, perhaps, or disappointment. But what she saw was something worse, understanding. You need stability, he finally said. If this job offers that, you should take it. You think so? I do. Even if it means. Even so. The twins played in the stroller, oblivious to the adults' conversation. Sophie was trying to put her foot in her mouth. Lily watched with scientific fascination. I have a few things to sort out before making the decision, Olivia said. Documents, paperwork, bureaucratic things. Need help? You don't have to. I know I don't have to. I'm offering. Olivia hesitated. Accepting help was still difficult, but refusing was getting even harder. Okay. The day started at the municipal registry office. Olivia needed to update some of the twins' documents, and Daniel offered a ride because public transportation with a double stroller was, in her words, an exercise in medieval torture. You exaggerate, Daniel said as he parked. You've never tried to get on a crowded bus with 2 babies and a stroller that has a mind of its own. I can't say I have. Then don't have an opinion. Caleb was in the back seat, suspended from school because of the soda incident. He had spent the entire morning asking questions. Dad, why is Olivia leaving? She got a job in Chicago. Is Chicago far? An hour. Is that a lot? Depends. Depends on what? On how you measure distance. In miles? Emotionally. Caleb frowned, processing the information. Adults are confusing. I completely agree, Olivia said from the front seat. The registry office was an exercise in patience. Long lines, slow employees, forms that seemed to have been written in code. Olivia filled out papers while Daniel held Sophie, and Caleb entertained Lily by making faces. She's laughing, Caleb announced proudly. Babies laugh at anything, Daniel said. That's not true. Babies are demanding critics. She's laughing because I'm funny. Sophie, in Daniel's arms, let out an impressive burp. Was that a compliment or a criticism? Daniel asked. With babies, you never know, Olivia replied without taking her eyes off the form. After the registry office, they stopped for lunch at a diner. Caleb ordered a sandwich that was bigger than his head. The twins ate pieces of fruit and tried to throw half of it on the floor. They do this on purpose, Olivia explained when a banana slice went flying near a gentleman at the next table. Sorry, Daniel said to the man, who looked at the group with a mixture of irritation and amusement. How many children do you have? The man asked. The silence that followed was deafening. We're not. Olivia started. They're not. Daniel tried at the same time. It's complicated, Caleb completed, chewing his sandwich. The man raised his eyebrows, clearly confused, and went back to his meal. Daniel and Olivia exchanged an embarrassed look. That was weird, very. But you look like a family, Caleb observed casually. Like if someone looked from the outside. Caleb, Daniel said in a warning tone. What? It's true. Look, you're holding Sophie, Olivia is feeding Lily, and I'm here eating my sandwich. It looks like a normal family. The definition of normal family is pretty broad, Olivia said. Exactly. Broad enough to include you guys. Before any adult could respond, a familiar voice cut through the air. Well, what an adorable scene. Mrs. Thompson materialized next to the table as if she had been summoned by supernatural forces. She was carrying a shopping bag and a smile that promised nothing good. Mrs. Thompson, Daniel said, trying to sound casual. What a coincidence. Naperville is a small town, Mr. Collins. Coincidences happen. She looked at the group. Daniel with Sophie in his arms, Olivia feeding Lily, Caleb in the middle eating as if there were no tomorrow. You look like a real family, she commented. It's beautiful to see. We're not, Olivia started. Yet, Mrs. Thompson interrupted with a smile. The key word is yet. And she left before anyone could respond. The silence at the table was palpable. Is she always like this? Olivia asked. Always. How did she know we were here? I have theories, but none I can prove. Caleb shrugged. She probably has a radar, like superheroes. After lunch, they went to a few more places. Bank, post office, a store to buy supplies for the twins. With each stop, the dynamic between them became more natural. As if it were routine, as if it were normal. And maybe that was the problem. Daniel, Olivia said as they walked back to the car. Thank you for today. You don't need to thank me. Yes, I do. You spent the whole day helping me with boring bureaucratic things. They weren't boring. They were interesting. Liar. Okay, they were a little boring, but the company made up for it. Olivia smiled, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. Do you think I should go to Chicago? Daniel took a while to respond. I think you should do what makes you happy, what gives you stability. That doesn't answer my question, because the answer isn't mine to give. They looked at each other for a long moment, something unspoken hanging in the air between them. Olivia's phone rang, breaking the moment. It was the company from Chicago. Olivia answered, and Daniel watched her expression change from hope to confusion to something that looked like disappointment. I understand, she said. Yes, I understand. Thank you for letting me know. She hung up. What was it? Daniel asked. The job has a 3-month training period, full-time, irregular hours. And they don't accept employees with small children during training. They say it's too intensive. Daniel was silent, processing. So you would have to find someone to take care of the girls for 3 months. Someone trustworthy. In Chicago, where I don't know anyone. The impossibility of the situation hung in the air. Or, Olivia said quietly, I let this opportunity pass, and I stay where I am, without a job, without stability, without anything. She looked at the twins sleeping in the car, then at Daniel. Sometimes it feels like no matter what I do, all the doors close. Daniel wanted to say something comforting, something that would make everything better. But before he could speak, another message arrived on Olivia's phone. It was from Richard's lawyer. And the content made her face go white. The message from Richard's lawyer was simple. He was giving up on the visitation process. No explanation. No reason. Just giving up. Olivia read it 3 times, hoping to find some hidden catch in the words. "What does it say?" Daniel asked. He gave up. Gave up? On the girls, on the process, on everything. She should feel relief. Instead, she felt anger. An old, accumulated anger that overflowed before she could control it. He just gives up, as if they were a project he lost interest in. Who does that? People who don't deserve to be parents. I chose him, Daniel. I looked at this man and thought, yes, this is the future. You couldn't have known. I should have known. I always choose wrong. Daniel stayed silent. Olivia leaned against the car, looking at the twins sleeping in the back seat. That's why I left you, she said suddenly. Daniel blinked. What? 15 years ago, you asked why I disappeared. That's why. For choosing wrong? For being afraid of choosing right. She finally looked at him, her eyes shining with something that looked like regret. You were too much, Daniel. Smart, kind, with a bright future ahead. And I was an ordinary girl from an ordinary family, with nothing special. That's not true. That's how I saw myself. And the more you treated me well, the more certain I was that you would realize you deserved someone better. Daniel felt his chest tighten. So you left before I could leave? Pathetic, isn't it? No, it's sad. Olivia gave a bitter laugh. Thanks for the compliment. It wasn't a compliment. It was an observation. They stayed silent for a moment. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the parking lot. I never would have left you, Daniel said, if you had stayed. You can't know that. Yes, I can, because I spent 15 years wondering why. 15 years thinking I had done something wrong, that I was the problem. You were never the problem. I know that now. It would have been useful to know before. Olivia lowered her eyes. I'm sorry. I know. Do you forgive me? Daniel considered the question. I forgive you for leaving, but I'm still processing the fact that I could have avoided 15 years of confusion with a simple conversation. Conversations weren't my strong suit at 17. Clearly. Olivia almost smiled. You're being sarcastic. A little. It's my defense mechanism. I thought your defense mechanism was seeming too understanding. I have several, depends on the situation. This time she really smiled. I missed you, she admitted. All these years, even trying not to think about you. Me too. Even after getting married? Melissa knew. She knew me too well not to notice there was someone in my past who still took up space. And she didn't mind? She said the past is part of who we are, that ignoring it doesn't make it disappear. She sounds like she was a wise woman. She was. Olivia looked at him for a long moment. Daniel, even with all this, love doesn't solve everything. I know. I'm still a mess. Still don't have a job or a house or stability. I know that too. And you still want to. Be near you? Yes, even with the mess. Why? Because life is a mess anyway. At least with you, it's an interesting mess. Olivia shook her head. You're impossible. Thank you. Lily woke up at that moment, making that protest sound babies make when the world isn't exactly how they want it. She wants attention, Olivia said. She's your daughter. Makes sense. What does that mean? That you also like attention, you just pretend you don't. I don't like attention. You literally threw a banana at a stranger to see his reaction. That was Lily. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. You're comparing my 1-year-old daughter to an apple? It's an expression. It's a strange expression. Daniel laughed. A real laugh, the kind that makes eyes sparkle. I missed this, he said. What? Arguing about nonsense with you. The following days were strange. Good, but strange. Daniel and Olivia saw each other more frequently. The barriers were falling, slowly but steadily. Caleb already treated the twins like sisters. Mrs. Thompson made increasingly obvious comments. Until the night of the event arrived. It was a charity party organized by Daniel's company. He needed to go. It was part of the job. Olivia wasn't invited, not officially. But she saw the photos. The next day, while scrolling through her phone, an image appeared on a local news site. Daniel Collins at charity event, next to a blonde, elegant woman, smiling at the camera. The caption said, Businessman Daniel Collins and his companion at the gala night. Companion. Olivia felt her stomach sink. Of course. He would have someone from his world, someone who wore gala dresses and knew how to behave at elegant parties. Not a single mother from a motel with 2 babies and 0 prospects. When Daniel called later, she didn't answer. When he sent a message, she responded with monosyllables. The next morning, when he showed up at school, she avoided him. "Olivia, wait," he called. She didn't stop. "What's going on?" "Nothing. That's clearly not nothing." "Daniel, you don't owe me explanations. We're not anything officially." "What are you talking about?" "Your companion, at the party." Daniel was confused for a second. Then it clicked. "You saw the photo." "Everyone saw the photo." "Olivia, that was my cousin Emily." Silence. "Your cousin. She lives in Boston. She was visiting and I needed someone to go with me." "Your cousin." "That's what I said." Olivia felt her face heat up. "Oh, yes. Oh, I may have jumped to conclusions." "May have." "Okay, I definitely jumped to conclusions." Daniel crossed his arms, but there was a smile trying to escape. "You were jealous." "I wasn't jealous." "Yes, you were. It was just concern." "Concern is another word for jealous." "It's not." "Yes, it is." Olivia huffed. "You're unbearable. But you like me anyway." She opened her mouth to deny it, but the words didn't come out. Because he was right, and for the first time, she didn't want to run from that truth. The confession of jealousy hung in the air between them, like smoke that refuses to dissipate. Olivia was still red. Daniel was still smiling, and the twins watched everything as if watching an entertainment show made especially for them. "So," Daniel said, "you like me." "I didn't say that." "You didn't deny it." "Not denying isn't the same as confirming. In practical terms, it's pretty similar." Olivia crossed her arms, trying to look irritated. It wasn't working. "You're unbearable." "You already said that." "It deserves to be repeated." Daniel took a step closer, not invasive but intentional. "Olivia, what are you going to do about Chicago?" The question undid the light moment. Reality came back like a bucket of cold water. "I don't know. When's the deadline to respond?" "Tomorrow." "And you still haven't decided?" "I've been weighing the pros and cons." "And what are they?" Olivia sighed. "Pros, stable job, decent salary, chance to start over. Cons, I need someone to take care of the girls for 3 months. I don't know anyone in Chicago and—" She stopped. "And?" Daniel pressed. "And you're here." The words came out before she could hold them back. Daniel was silent for a moment. "Is that a pro or a con?" "I haven't decided yet." "Fair enough." Sophie chose that moment to throw her pacifier on the ground. Olivia bent down to pick it up, grateful for the distraction. "Olivia." She stood up, pacifier in hand. "What?" "I have a proposal." "What kind of proposal?" "A practical proposal. No emotional pressure." "That already sounds like emotional pressure." "Just listen before judging." Olivia made a go-ahead gesture. "My house has an annex. It was Melissa's office, but it's been empty for years. It has an independent entrance, bathroom, enough space for you and the girls." Olivia opened her mouth, but Daniel continued before she could interrupt. "It's not charity. It would be an agreement. You pay what you can when you can. No deadline, no pressure." "Daniel, you'd have stability to look for a job here in Naperville. The girls would have space, and I'd have neighbors who throw food at people. That's not a positive point. For me it is. Life was monotonous before you showed up." Olivia shook her head. "You're offering me your house, an annex to my house. It's different. It's the same property. Technically, yes, but with total privacy. Daniel, people will talk." "People always talk. Mrs. Thompson has already invented our wedding and the names of our future children." "What?" "She mentioned something about Emily for a girl and Thomas for a boy." I tried not to pay attention. Olivia didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "This is crazy." "Most of the best decisions are." "That's not true." "Maybe not, but it sounds inspiring." Lily made a sound that seemed like laughter or agreement. "Hard to tell." "You're using my daughters to convince me," Olivia accused. "They clearly have good taste. They're 1 year old. Their taste is literally putting everything in their mouth, including my finger last week. It hurt quite a bit." Olivia finally laughed, a laugh of surrender. "Why are you doing this?" "Doing what?" "Being so persistent. After everything." Daniel considered the question seriously. "Because 15 years ago I let you leave without fighting. I spent 15 years wondering what if. I don't want to spend another 15 with the same question." The words hung between them, heavy and honest. "I don't want to hurt you," Olivia said quietly. "I have a history of ruining things." Everyone does. My history is particularly impressive. Then will be two disasters trying not to collide. Sounds interesting. Sounds risky. That too. But what's the alternative? You go to Chicago, spend 3 months without the girls, working in a place where you don't know anyone, trying to prove you can do everything alone. When you put it like that, or you stay here, close to someone who cares about you, with space to breathe and figure out the next step. And what do you get out of this? Noisy neighbors and a stubborn woman who argues with me about everything. That doesn't sound like an advantage. Depends on perspective. Olivia looked at the twins. Sophie had fallen asleep. Lily played with her own feet, completely unconcerned with the adult decisions happening around her. If I accept, Olivia said slowly, it doesn't mean we're together. I know. It means I'm accepting help. Temporarily. Understood. And you can't keep making that lovesick face every time you see me. I don't make a lovesick face. Yes, you do. Even Caleb commented. What did he say? That you look like a dog waiting for a treat when I'm around. Daniel made a face. That's offensive. It's accurate. Dogs are noble animals. It wasn't a compliment, Daniel. I'm going to consider it a compliment anyway. Olivia shook her head but was smiling. You're impossible. You already said that too. Because it keeps being true. They stayed silent for a moment, but it wasn't a tense silence anymore. It was something softer, more comfortable. So? Daniel asked. What's the answer? Olivia took a deep breath. Chicago meant starting over, forced independence, and 3 months away from her daughters. Naperville meant uncertainty, dangerous proximity, and a man who looked at her as if she were the answer to questions he didn't even know he had. I need to see the annex first, she finally said, before deciding anything. Fair. And if it's horrible, I won't accept. Also fair. And you can't decorate before I see it. I want to see how it really is. You think I would decorate to impress you? Would you? Daniel hesitated. Maybe a few flower vases. I knew it, he smiled. She smiled back, and for the first time in a long time, the future didn't seem so scary. Tomorrow, Daniel offered. To see the annex? Tomorrow. Olivia grabbed the stroller and started to walk away. But after a few steps, she stopped and looked back. Daniel? Yes? Thank you for not giving up, he nodded. Always. She left, and Daniel stood there, feeling something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. The annex wasn't horrible. In fact, it was annoyingly perfect. Olivia stood at the entrance, looking at the space Daniel had promised not to decorate, and clearly had decorated anyway. You said you weren't going to touch anything. I said I wasn't going to put flower vases. And the new curtains? Curtains aren't flowers. And the rug? The rug is a safety issue. The girls are crawling. And the bed with new sheets? Basic hygiene. Olivia crossed her arms. You're impossible. You already said that, several times. Because it keeps being true. The twins had already escaped from the stroller and were crawling around the space as if they were explorers discovering a new continent. Lily found the rug and immediately tried to put it in her mouth. Sophie clapped for nothing in particular. They liked it, Daniel observed. They like anything they find interesting. Still, Olivia sighed. It was a sigh of surrender. Okay, I accept. Daniel's smile was worth every second of resistance she tried to maintain. 3 months later, life had a different rhythm. Olivia got a job at an accounting firm in Naperville, not in Chicago. The selection process was long, the interviews were tense, but she got it. Full-time, benefits, and most importantly, hours that allowed her to be present for the girls. The annex had become home. The twins were walking now, or rather, running uncontrollably across any available flat surface. Daniel's house had become an obstacle course designed to stop 2 children determined to explore every forbidden corner. Lily, don't put that in your mouth, Olivia said for the 100th time that day. What is that? Daniel asked, approaching. I'd rather not know. Fair enough. Caleb had taken on the role of big brother with impressive seriousness. He taught the twins to make faces, read books to them with dramatic voices, and explain scientific concepts they clearly didn't understand. Sophie, this is gravity, he said one afternoon, dropping a ball repeatedly. That's why things fall. Sophie picked up the ball and threw it at his head. She understood the concept, Daniel commented, just applied it creatively. The first kiss happened on an ordinary Tuesday. There was no dramatic music, no cinematic rain, no elaborate declarations. just Daniel and Olivia in the kitchen, arguing about the best way to organize the pantry. "You can't put cereal on the bottom shelf," Olivia argued. "The girls will get it. But it's easier to reach. For them too." "Olivia, they're still small. They can't open the pantry door. You underestimate the determination of hungry babies. You overestimate the motor skills of 1-year-olds. I'm a mother of twins. I know what they're capable of. And I've been a father for 8 years. I also know a few things." They stared at each other, neither wanting to give in, and then Daniel kissed her. It was quick, unexpected, and completely out of context. "What was that?" Olivia asked when he pulled away. "You look beautiful, arguing about cereal. I couldn't resist." "That doesn't make sense. Most things between us don't." She thought about arguing, thought about analyzing, thought about all the reasons why this was complicated. Then she stopped thinking and kissed him back. A year later, on a September morning, the traffic in front of the school was slower than a turtle crossing hot pavement. Some things never changed, but others changed completely. Daniel parked the car in a legal spot this time and looked at the back seat. Caleb was squeezed between 2 car seats with the expression of someone who had accepted his fate. "Dad, when are the girls going to be old enough to sit without car seats?" "A few more years." "A few is how many?" "Many." Caleb sighed dramatically. "My life is a constant sacrifice. Drama runs in the family," Olivia commented from the front seat. "I'm not dramatic," Daniel said. "You cried watching a dog food commercial last week. The dog had lost its owner. It was sad. It was a 30-second commercial. A very emotional 30 seconds. They got out of the car like a coordinated military operation. Daniel picked up Sophie. Olivia picked up Lily. Caleb grabbed the backpacks, his and the twins, because now the girls attended the daycare attached to the school. "Ready?" Daniel asked. "Always," Olivia replied. They crossed the crosswalk together. The same crosswalk where it all began, where a stuck stroller and unexpected help had put 2 lives on a collision course again. Mrs. Thompson watched from the school entrance, mug in hand, smile on her face. "Collins family," she greeted when they approached. "Beautiful morning." "We're not officially Collins yet," Olivia corrected. "Technically," Mrs. Thompson said, "but technically is for documents. In practice, you've been a family since I saw Mr. Collins carrying diapers in the parking lot a year ago." "That was an emergency," Daniel said. "Emergencies reveal character." Caleb ran off to meet his friends. The twins were dropped off at daycare, where Lily immediately stole another child's toy and Sophie sat and watched with silent approval. "They're terrible," Olivia said with pride. "They're your daughters. Makes sense." Was that an insult? It was an affectionate observation. They walked back to the car holding hands, not because it was a dramatic gesture, but because it was natural. Because after a year of shared coffee, pantry arguments, sleepless nights, and chaotic mornings, holding each other's hand had become as automatic as breathing. "Do you think we're doing this right?" Olivia asked as Daniel started the car. "Doing what right?" "This, us, the improvised family." But Daniel considered the question. "There's no doing it right. There's doing it our way and hoping we don't mess up too much." "That's comforting." "I know. It's my talent." Olivia laughed. The car left the parking lot and entered Naperville traffic, which continued to be slow as always. The past hadn't been erased. The scars still existed, the fears still appeared sometimes, and not everything was perfect. But perfect was overrated. What they had was real. Built little by little, with patience, humor, and an absurd amount of diapers. "Daniel?" "Yes, thank you." "For what?" "For parking illegally that day." Daniel smiled. "Best ticket I ever paid." And as they drove through the city that had brought their paths together, Olivia finally understood one thing. She hadn't chosen wrong this time. She had chosen to come home. That was the story of Daniel and Olivia, marked by difficult choices, unexpected reunions, and second chances. If you believe that unexpected encounters can change everything, comment the word reunion down below. I really want to know your opinion. Do you think Olivia should accept Daniel's help or follow her own path? Leave your comment, subscribe to the channel, and until the next story.